Good day, everybody. Welcome to The Pulse. This is Dr. Khalfani, and we're here for another exciting episode for looking at what goes on in the heart of the African community, globally speaking, that is. Today, we have none other than Amiri Baraka. Amiri Baraka is such an important figure in our cultural history, in our political history. He has paved the way in so many ways for African American community and for people of African descent around the world. And so today we're going to spend some time with him talking about his contributions. He is a true Newarker, born here in Newark, and he has done many things in Newark, but also around the African world. And so it's just an honor for us to be here today. And I say welcome, Amiri Baraka. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
We want to spend a little time just getting right into the heart of things here. You know, I know that you're a busy person. You're around speaking all the time and enlightening folks with your words and in your poetry and in plays. But today I really want to think about something specific. Next year will be the 50th anniversary of Blues People and the Dutchmen, and marks 50 years for you being in the struggle. What do you think it would be is the impact of these works over that time?
Well, I think that they've had more impact than any other thing I've done in terms of those books. I mean, in the play, the book, because it tried to sum up the origins of Afro-American music, and in doing so, try to tell the history of the people. I think I learned that at Howard from the great Sterling Brown. You know, he took us to his house, showed us all these records. He said, "That's your history." So a decade later, I figured out what he meant. That in the music, the people tell their stories, their history. And so you want to know the history of the Afro-American people, listen to their music. They're telling you all the time. So that's what Blues People was trying to do, establish that when the music changes, the people have changed. It means they're in another kind of context historically, you know, time, place, condition. But you can always tell that whether you listen to what Du Bois called the sorrow songs, you know, the old spirituals, whether you listen to the blues, either country blues or city blues, whether you're listening to Motown, you know, or whether you're listening to Billie Holiday, you know, you're gonna be able to tell the people what the people are doing, what their state of mind is, what the state of their circumstances are through that music. And that's what Blues People did. And I'm really kind of happy that a lot of musicians come up to me and tell me that they read that book and they think that it's important, a valuable book. So that, as far as Dutchman is concerned, that was a breakthrough at the time. You see, 1963, I recently saw a film on TV, you know, Turner Classic Movies,
Right,
called Ensign Pulver, which was the follow-up to Mr. Roberts. And in that, Al Freeman, who starred in Dutchman 2 years later, and Diana Sands, who became, you know, famous among us for Blues for Mr. Charlie, I saw them playing some knucklehead roles and, you know, one of these fake jungle things that they in. So that's why they were so elated, black actors, about Dutchman and also Blues for Mr. Charlie, because it gave them a chance to say something about the real world, you know. And interestingly, Edward Albee and I were in the same workshop that year. You know, they did our plays together, Dutchman and what was it? Bessie Smith's story? No. One of those things that he did at that time. They were together on the program. But to see now, since Albee has won 4 Pulitzer Prizes, it just shows you what happens. But the play is constantly revived. It's constantly done all over the world, you know. And somebody just told me yesterday they're getting ready to do it somewhere down there,
Okay,
New Orleans or something like that.
well, because I saw it on Broadway about maybe 3-4 years ago, and I wanted to know if you thought that since it still resonates and it's still being performed, would you like to see it other places played, or do you have other ideas about other plays that you think would tell the story better?
No,
today?
this tells you the context of being black in America. See, first of all, they commissioned another play from me, a full-length play, which I wrote, called God, I can't even remember what it was called. Anyway, Albee himself turned that down. He was part of the producers of that. I have written maybe 50 plays in my life, but the point is, I think they like Dutchman because the black man gets killed in it. See, but I have a whole lot of plays, and a lot of them play different places. But see, there's a difference when you're young and you just reaching out to say, to express what you feel. But when you get a little older and have studied more, then you get more precise with what you want to say. See, and what I want to say about this country and about black people in it became more offensive to the powers that be. So they chose not to do them anymore. We're doing a play though next spring. Woody King, New Federal Theater, we're doing a play about Du Bois called The Most Dangerous Man in America. That's what the FBI called him in 1951. Right. The most dangerous man in America. So we're doing that play. It's about him when he went to court, when they accused him of being an agent of a foreign power, because he was against the nuclear bomb. And I mean, see the frustration of seeing these corny things on Broadway and in the movies, stupid stuff, and when you see black people in there, they're part of some mediocre stuff, is that our history is much more exciting than what you see on Broadway or the movies, you see. Right. Give me the Fred Douglass story, or Box Brown being sent to Philadelphia in a box, or Linda Brent hiding in a crawl space from the slave master who's trying to rape her.
So how do we get those types of plays out there?
You see, I've been saying that now for a long time. I mean, is that, see, when the Black Arts Movement, and when we put it together in the 60s, to raise the question of black artists, particularly those who were doing something that we thought was heavy, should be directed at the black community. The minute we did that, didn't Hollywood and those other people say, aha, I got an idea, let's put them in stuff. So suddenly you get black people in the movies, black people on Broadway, you see what I'm saying? But you co-opt the black theater movement, because many of these then actors break their necks to go to Hollywood and do that stuff, stupid stuff.
But not do things in our community.
So look on Broadway right now. What black is out on Broadway now? You have a black cast doing, what is it? Streetcar Named Desire. Yeah. So why would you get black people to do, Tennessee Williams? Tennessee Williams is a great writer. Don't get me wrong. I saw a production of that I liked. There are plays by black people. Why not do, but you cannot say that to them because they're doing what they want to do. See, and you become just a means to an end. They're going to exploit you. They figure somebody want to see black people doing Streetcar Named Desire. Right.
Well, we're going to come back to that because I think that that's a great thing for us to think about in terms of our roles and things. But we're going to take a brief break and we'll be right back with The Pulse.
114th Infantry Company, Iraq.
The memories are all blurred.
I don't know what's wrong with me.
The words, they're hard to find.
I came back a different person.
I wonder if she's better off without me.
You just feel alone.
You gave all to the cause of freedom. Now it's our turn to give our all to you. It's free and totally confidential. Reach us at operationnotforgotten.com. We are here.
In order to beat breast cancer, I knew I would have to lose my breasts. But to reclaim my life, I chose breast reconstruction.
Each year, nearly 150,000 women will learn they will undergo a mastectomy due to breast cancer. But 7 out of 10 women are never told about their breast reconstruction options. Breast reconstruction is a very important part of the healing process, both physically and emotionally. Download my song Flower to share the message and help us share the fact that women can feel whole again.
Welcome back to The Pulse. This is Dr. Khalfani, and I'm here with Amiri Baraka. And you know, Amiri Baraka, his works are so amazing. He's the author of over 40 books and articles. He's has so many plays, as he mentioned before, that we can only begin to touch on them today. But you know, you were talking about the plays that you had done, and that this is this new one, and that a lot of times people don't want to do these new ideas. Yeah. You know, it's interesting because I think some of that stems from these movements, these things that you guys engaged in back in the 60s and 70s. One, for instance, I think was one of the biggest, and this is one of the things that motivated me to look into your works a lot, and that was that on March the 10th and the 12th of 1972, you had thousands of African Americans who gathered in Gary, Indiana, and that was for the National Black Political Convention, of which you were one of the organizers for, probably the principal organizer. And so, you know, but today, politics is very different. Do you see that convention as being something similar to that would benefit us today?
Sure, we need that desperately. The reason that we did that then is that we were trying to organize ourselves not only here in Newark, because we had just won the mayor, Gibson, and so we thought that the whole political motion that was happening in places like Newark, Gary, Cleveland, you know, we need to gather that momentum and try to make it a national phenomenon. And so it was, because what the Gary Convention did was then set up the creation of what came to be the Black Caucus, that you didn't have enough black people who understood that when they said black power, that meant right where you were, you know, that you had to act locally, think globally, but act locally. You see what I mean? And so that's what we try to do. The reason that it was effective is that there were three organizers. Myself, as it was a black nationalist who represented the organization, the Congress of African People, out of Newark, and local politics. There was Richard Hatcher, who had just gotten elected as the mayor of Gary, Indiana. That's why we had it in Gary, because we arrived in Gary. He's got red, black, and green flags all over the place. We had borrowed money from some black bankers in Chicago to set it up. And we actually got 8,000 folks, which is a fantastic kind of gathering. We had representatives from every state in the union. And the third organizer was Charles Diggs, who was, you know, a member of Congress, head of the African Committee of Congress. And so you had the three levels. You had the kind of local politics, the nationalism, and the whole congressional outreach. And so we were able then to pull a lot of electoral politicians into it, but people generally who believed the idea that we had to begin to organize so that we get into these local elections. Because remember, it was just beginning to open up. I mean, when black people, if you look at our history, you know, 145 years ago, we were slaves, you know, so that Obama's emergence is not the result of his own greatness so much as it is the result of the struggles of black people consistently. See, the problem now, if you want to take it there, is because Obama has been elected, it's cooled us out somewhat. You see what I mean? Right. And we're not the same kind of outrageously militant people, because black people forced this country forward. I mean, there's no doubt about that. What we did, the demonstrations, and down there, Carmichael and them, and Dr. King in the South, and Malcolm X in the North, this is what forced the whole country forward. You see what I'm saying? And even now, I say Obama cooled us out, but we have no choice. Progressive people, certainly Afro-American people, Latinos, Asians, we have no choice but to put him back in there, even though we have problems with him, you know, with some of the things that he's done. Certainly, I thought that Libya thing was a fiasco, and I think the Syria thing is going to be a fiasco. But the point is, when you see what the other folks represent, Romney and them, the coming of the corporate state, where you have a new kind of fascism, where instead of a state fascism, you now have a corporate fascism, and that's what Romney represents. And people have to understand that and be clear on why we need political power.
Now, but one thing I want to push on that is that back in the 60s and 70s, you guys spent a lot of time on this debate between the cultural nationalists and the political nationalists. And today, today, if you look around, really, what's the cultural agenda today? You know, does that have a piece that we can think about that could really usher this forward? Because it was a synergy that was happening then, even though there was some disagreement.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that was a false dichotomy.
Right.
And even though people finally got killed with the help of the FBI, you understand, still the problem of separating cultural organization from political organization is the dumbest idea you can come up with. You understand? Because there have to be a unity between those. Like okay, you've made some political motion, but at the same time, where's the black theater movement? Where are the black theaters? We live in 27 cities in this country. There should be 27 theaters. Mm-hmm. You understand? Here in Newark, for instance, you can't even get to do anything in Symphony Hall because of the negative kind of relationship between, say, the artists and City Hall, you understand? When that should be a theater, not just in J-PAC, which is bringing stuff in like a rental theater, but you should have a kind of repertory theater right in this town to do all the nationalities in this town. And certainly, you know, Afro-American theater and global theater. But see, until we put those things together, you must have a cultural movement. You must know, for instance, the slave narratives and the Harlem Renaissance, right, you know, and the Black Arts movement. And you must know those things to know, as Du Bois said, to develop a true self-consciousness, so you know who it is you are. See, the problem with us is we think we're just here in the wilderness of white America and don't understand who we are to be there and what we have to do.
Right, right. And on that note, I'm gonna say that Du Bois also said that any art that you have has to be propaganda. Any art that's not propaganda is a waste of time.
That's what he said.
He didn't want anything to do with it.
That's what he said.
And on that note, we'll be right back.
Okay.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Khalfani. We're here. This is The Pulse, and we're here with none other than Amiri Baraka. And with Mr. Baraka here, we want to talk about the great things he's done. And to this time, I really want you to think about looking at the fact that here you had the Poet Laureate of the state of New Jersey, the one and only Poet Laureate for the state of New Jersey. He'll always be the Poet Laureate for our community. But, you know, we were talking about this arts movement, and I want to just follow up a little bit on that in thinking about, you know, Harlem, Newark, arts movement. How do we get that moving again if we think about what Du Bois was saying, if we think about its value?
Well, first we have to focus on the question of self-determination, rather than running off to be in all these things and forgetting that your first responsibility is to develop a cultural presence in your own community, because that is an educational thing. It's educational. You see, now if we could do plays about Fred Douglass and Box Brown, you understand, and the movement of into the cities, the immigration into the cities, and all those things. If we could do those on a repertory all the time, you know, the life of Malcolm X, not the Hollywood version, you know, the life of Martin Luther King, you know, to get theater that actually tells us our history, you know, as colorfully as this corny stuff on TV, and then that is the political training you need. So you need artists who are politically aware. and politicians who understand that the cultural development is important. And they must collectively put these things together. Now, we have the Lincoln Park Coast Cultural District that we've been working on now for, 8, 9 years. We're putting on a music festival in July 27, 28, 29. We were trying to get NJPAC to help us bring the whole some kind of power to what we are doing at the south end of Broad Street. See, the north end of Broad Street, they got that NJPAC, the arena, even though they don't pay no taxes. But they're there doing that. But at the south end of Broad Street, it's still low. Since Symphony Hall is not working, Symphony Hall should be pumping, because that's right, that's the gym. I know. We're building a theater that will open in the spring, right at the site of Lincoln's church, where Lincoln spoke, and we hope then to be able to pump up life at the south end of that. And we still have in mind building a museum of Afro-American music in affiliation with the Smithsonian. So we're working on it. The problem is you can't get the great sweeping amount of funds that they get to do the other side. For instance, the director of NJPAC, Mr. Goldman, had a salary of $700,000 a year. Now, how can you get a salary of $700,000 a year in Newark? You see what I mean? Now, if we had $700,000 for everything that we're trying to do, you see what I mean? Here's one person making that. But for everything we're trying to do, we don't have nearly that much. So it's a matter of the distribution of resources, obviously, and the organization, self-organization for, self-determination.
Right, right. Now, one other thing I wanted to probe into here is this. You mentioned a little bit about politics. We talked some about it. But there's this whole political idea, and I just want to spend a brief minute on it, that here you have this so-called post-racial idea that came up after the election of Obama. What's your take on that?
Well, that's just, verbiage. I mean, obviously, Trayvon Martin dispels that right away,
Right.
But I think the most important thing that Obama thing did is it brought the progressive white people, which is a minority,
right.
Afro-Americans, another minority, the Latinos, another minority, Asians, another minority, but those, quote, minorities together were able then to actually conquer the presidency. And we have to remember that without that kind of coalition, we are powerless. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We'll be in the hands of these new fascists, these people who want this kind of corporate dictatorship. So post-racial is a good idea, but it ain't real.
Right, right.
You know what I'm saying? And the only way to fight that is with a kind of coalition of these so-called minorities who can fight for democracy, mm-hmm. and say, stop things like Citizens United, which our boy Clarence and his wife put together, which enables the corporations now to give unlimited funds in elections.
Right.
So if they can give it unlimited funds, what does that mean about democracy? And that's why the thing in Wisconsin went badly, because suddenly when they were trying to recall the governor in Wisconsin, because he was trying to get rid of public unions, the super PACs, the Koch brothers, all those people put in money, enormous amount of money, to reverse that, to bring, the kind of resources that could reverse that. I mean, it got so bad that these millionaires even threw out a few pennies to, to try to bail out, what's his name, Zimmerman down there,
mm-hmm.
So it's a question of the people versus the corporations, because that's the route to new fascism.
Right.
Hitler and them lost, but the point is people have to realize that they did not fight to get rid of fascism, but to take it over. So that's what we have to be aware of. What is going to be the new fascism? Dictatorship by the corporations.
Well, let's kind of wrap up on this. Yeah. You, as someone who's always been in the fight, everything I've seen on you, everything I've read, has always been in the fight. Let's take a look 50, 100 years down the road. What do you see as the legacy that's left behind for Amiri Baraka? How do people see you in that time span?
Well, I hope that they understand that really what I was a soldier, that I was out here trying to fight these people with a number of other brothers and sisters I know who can identify with the idea of soldier. That's what you have to do. You have to fight this. We're not here because we want to be, you know, but since we are here, we have to fight to make this better. And it is, in that sense, where I say, you know, there are a lot of soldiers who don't even know they're soldiers, you know, but that's what you have to see your role, whether you're a writer, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a politician. You have to see yourself as a soldier against this kind of, you know, oncoming fascism, this kind of racism, you know, this kind of exploitation. Yeah. You have to assume that identity as a soldier.
Well, I mean, I think that you've been a soldier, and I want to thank you for being a soldier. Okay. Being an example for those who come after you of being soldiers. So we want to thank you for joining us here. It's been great. We're here at the Pulse, being on the tip of what's going on in the African community. And we had the honor of having Amiri Baraka, who's a living legend, and he tells the story of the great things to come, really, by looking at what we have to do to address the changes that need to happen in our community. Once again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon. I'm Dr. Khalfani. Goodbye. Oh, God, you